Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to yet another webinar by the International Council for Circular Economy, where the brightest ideas are shared to drive entrepreneurs as well as businesses forward. ICC is also a forum of some supremely talented people from an eclectic range of sectors with a common vision of going towards a society where sustainable development is the order of the day. Ubiquitous enough, what we stand for has to be what we stand on. Before we begin this webinar, I would like to extend my warm wishes on behalf of the International Council for Circular Economy. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming all of you to this webinar on extending product lifespan, a circular practice. This is the first part of our two sessions on extending product lifespan. ICC is the largest international network for professionals, corporates, and organizations working in circular economy in India. ICC operates on three strong pillars: educate, innovate, and inspire to establish strong connections amongst the circular economy community. It shares best practices to have an impact at a local and global level simultaneously. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. Jasper is the co-founder of Ouroboros, an online global company which acts to support CEOs and executives to develop their companies in a sustainable direction towards a circular economy. Currently, Jasper is an executive business advisor with them. He is passionate about creating development in people and to see them succeed in their business as well as personal life. That and the tireless effort and commitment to truly sustainable development is his trademark. Chief Strategy Officer at Pashupati Group, Nitin is a techno commercial professional working on developmental and futuristic opportunities in recycling of plastics, chemical recycling, specialty polymers, and specialty fibers, etc. He is a postgraduate in marketing and international business and is a graduate in electronics and engineering. He has 15 years of experience serving in various domains like web development, servicing, sales, marketing, administration, manufacturing, and trading across India. A postgraduate environmentalist, Shalini has been a climate change visionary. She's actively working on Project Zero that works on 12 major and 61 minor indicators and helps entities to reduce their carbon footprint by up to 3,500 kgs annually. Currently working as an advisor in sustainability and circular economy, she is chairing the International Council for Circular Economy. An active speaker, she takes up initiatives in promoting educational opportunities, leadership development, entrepreneurship, and empowerment of youth and women. She's associated with MSME as Influencer 2019 in the circular economy sector and with Delhi government on their entrepreneurship mindset program. She is mentor to 7 women-led enterprises. She is currently writing a book on the circular economy. Before I hand over the mic to our moderator, I would like to bring your focus on the topic of the webinar. The present model of consumption is to dispose and immediately replace the user damaged product without even assessing the possibility of extending its lifespan. There are many ways to which we can extend the lifespan of the products, like repair, reuse, recycle, refurbish, reduce, etc. Using these options, we can extend the life of a product. The goal of extending the life of the product is to minimize the impact on environment in the long run, while maximizing the societal and economic worth of the product. Our speakers today will be addressing some questions related to this topic. Now, I would hand over the mic to our moderator, come speaker, Ms. Shalini. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Susanna. At the outset, I would like to thank our speakers today, the delegates, for taking out their time. I can see we have people from diverse backgrounds joining us across the globe. We have visionaries, entrepreneurs, researchers, and people from bilateral and multilateral organizations. It's an honor to have an audience full of erudite people like you. At International Council for Circular Economy, our endeavor is to share knowledge and expertise on different tenets of circular economy. I have an experience of working with European Union on circular economy, and I started writing a book on circular economy almost a year back. And I remember when I started writing a topic on the law of obsolescence, how products that would last for ages would now become completely obsolete in just a couple of years. In such a case, it is smoothing to even think about life cycle assessments and product life extension. We have two experts with us today, and I look at them to understand the industry and individual perspectives. Product development encompasses everything from ideation, building, product launch, refining of the product. Now, this phase is characterized by rigorous research and development. Depending on the product, the development phase can last for years. Product life extension is comparatively a new term that is an important tenet of circular economy. Zesper, my first question is to you. What is product life extension and what role do you think it plays in making economies circular?
Thank you, Celine, and thank you, first of all, for having me here. It's a pleasure to participate in this debate and with such qualified people in the panel as well. But I would say, to put it in plain English, I would say that product life extension is really every kind of initiative that keeps an existing product within the current economy. So that's sort of in a broader scale. And it means, of course, as Susanna also said, everything related to repair, maintenance, upgrading, retrofitting, remanufacturing, whatever it is that we could call it. It's kind of like the era of re here. Everything you put re in front of in English kind of fits in here. And if you say what kind of role it plays, I would say it plays a major role. And one of the reasons is that there are so many things you can do within a circular economy. But one of the areas where you quite often and fairly fast can get a financial benefit out of it is exactly in product life extension, because very, very often you would see that it becomes cheaper and better to repair or upgrade something that you already have rather than starting from the very scratch. So one of the reasons why it's important is that if you are to transition a company, then it's important that, the leaders who decide to start the journey, they kind of take a leap of faith in moving forward, because they have to prepare the company for tomorrow while still delivering today. And that's the key challenge that any CEO is facing when to decide actually to start a transition. So making sure that you have some of the initiatives in the beginning that has a fairly quick return on investment can be really good to sort of fuel also that trust and believe that we're on the right track. So for that reason alone, it can be very important. But another reason why it is so important, and why quite obviously when you see the figures, if you take the next slide, please, then you can see that some interesting figures done. There are some years back, but I talked to the guy who made them a couple of months ago, and he said, well, they still stand as far as he could see. And it is that if you look at the process from getting the material off the ground, really, so picking it out of the soil and to having a material, say it could be aluminum or whatever it is you're producing, you would roughly use only 1/3 of the man hours used in total for the product, but 2/3 of the energy. Whereas in the process of taking from the material, the aluminum here, to the actual product, the cover or the frame of your phone or whatever it is, well, that takes 2/3 of the man hours and only roughly 1/3 of the energy. So of course, if you are to go back and avoid going all the way back, there are lots of stuff that lots of hours and lots of costs and energy that you don't have to use. And in the world where we are right now, in this COVID-19 situation, where a lot of companies are struggling, and thus we have a growing number of unemployments in many, many countries. Well, again, just looking at this slide and say, well, if you focus on this, where you will actually get return on your investment is in the man hours, not in the energy. side, right? So you'll be spending on jobs, you'll not be spending on energy. So also from a governmental perspective, or if you're a business leader and figure, well, I would like to also help making sure that we get more jobs created, then focusing on this kind of this area of the circular economy will definitely help.
Wonderful. I think some very interesting numbers. I mean, this is really interesting. So Zespo, Ben, you have also been very actively working on changing the mindset of people towards the products and their usage. You deal with a lot of startups and corporates as well. What is the right mindset that is needed to create this kind of impact, the successful circular business results? What takes it? What is the change in the mindset transition that is required for it?
I would say the key thing is really to start and end with business. And I normally put it in this so that you can see the slide here now. The essence of the circular economy, in my view, and the way I always sort of introduce people to the subject is, this is about creating business value with an embedded environmental impact. Of course, and both are equally important, because if you don't make a business impact, if you don't solve a business problem or generate business value, then it will always be a matter of a charity thing. It will be, well, this is good for us. It might be interesting and feels good to do, but will we scale it? Will we take it to the next level? I don't know. It always becomes part of who will fund it, right? It becomes a sponsor issue. Whereas if you are solving a problem that generates business value, it could be for yourself, your company, it could be for your clients, it doesn't really matter, anywhere in the value chain, well, then the discussion about scaling becomes infinitely easier, because of course, if we have just solved a major issue in this value chain, it's not a question if we should scale it, it's about how fast can we scale it, right? So it doesn't matter if you join the circular economy and want to work with it because you want to create environmental impact, or because you want to create a business impact, or you want to show your boss you're good at something, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Coming from a business point and making sure you deliver business value will rapidly increase your odds of success. So the core thing of a mindset is really to understand this and to learn to see the vast amount of business opportunities that comes out of transforming from a linear economy that just is literally bleeding cash all over the place, bleeding value all over the place. So grasping some of that value and transfer in your transformation into a circular economy is really the essence of it. So say you have a business and you can point to, say, 50 different issues that you could work on with your circular mindset. And 20 of those are also on the plate of your executive level. Well, why start anywhere else than there, right? Start there, because that's where you get the buy-in. And once you have done that, well, then some of the other 30 will most likely also be interested, both because you have a maturity, and once you've started here, next another thing might be valuable, and also because you will see that you start to grow your brand, and things that were not previously business-wise valuable will become valuable because they are next step in that building that brand and that loyalty with your customer, and so on and so on. So I would say that's really at the core. And then there is, if I could add a few more comments, I would say on aside from the mindset, then this understanding that this is where several disciplines meet, right? So at the core of this, and really a scarce resource right now, is people out there who has a solid understanding of the environmental side of this, understands the resource flow, and a solid understanding of business, strategy, leadership, because you need both. Because this is about changing the way you run a business, but it's at the core, it's still on resource flow. So we have lots of good people with a keen interest in circular economy in the environmental space. And I have that background myself originally. So I dare to say this, but we generally lack an understanding of an experience with business, because that's not part of the curriculum. So unless you've been fortunate enough to either start your own business or work in a very small one where you're very close to it, you most likely don't have it unless you have sort of taken on MBAs or whatever you might do. And on the other side, you will have lots of executives coming out of traditional business educations who hasn't got a clue about resource flow and sustainability. And thus nobody can really connect these dots, right? So that approach and understanding of you need that insight. And then if you can top it up with a bit of entrepreneurial understanding, a bit of innovation, a bit of process, a bit of communication, well, then you're really good to go. But the most fundamental part is actually bridging that, or having a lake in every of these two camps, and being that bridge, because that's really, that's the key to success.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Jasper. Nitin, you have been working in the industry for a long time, and we see that many companies have pledged to have zero carbon emissions by 2030. How do you see the net zero emissions versus the product lifespan uh, practices when it specifically comes to India? What is your view on these policies? Do you think that these policies are inclined more towards attaining zero emissions?
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you for having me here. And I would like to congratulate ICCE to organize this webinar.
Thank you.
And good afternoon to all the attendees. See, net zero, I would say, is a very ambitious project as of now, as you can see. Though it is achievable, but a lot of things has to be done in a very disciplined manner. And a lot of efforts and intentions are required to achieve all these things. Though many of the countries, I believe 20, they are putting it together like we will be having it by 2030, which seems to be a bit difficult to me. However, it is achievable maybe by the mid-century. First, let us understand what is net zero. It's basically a balance, overall balance of the emissions that a manufacturing setup or industry that produce into the atmosphere and what it takes out of the atmosphere. So it's a balance. One has to be gross negative. Total gross negative emissions should be the target of a manufacturing facility. Then only we can move towards net zero. That is one aspect. And to talk about the product life extension, which is obviously relatively a new term, which I would say is a part of a multi-faceted solution to create a circular economy. It is a term which describes how long a product can be used and reused in the industry to give maximizing any product's life. Basically, how long we can utilize a product again and again into the system to give an output which is suitable and which is required by someone. And when we look at it in terms of net zero versus the product life enhancement, so I would say it is a balance between the amount of greenhouse gases that we are emitting into the atmosphere and industry, and what we are removing from the atmosphere while manufacturing or creating a product for a long term, with the ultimate goal of maximizing any product's utilization into the society. In terms of achieving net zero, I feel that the main hurdle or the main challenge will be posed by heavy industries. And I think that a national energy plan with a long-term perspective will need to be framed and put into the place with the concern of all the stakeholders in the energy system is to be placed by the government. And further, I believe that a mix of approach is required. A mix of different kind of approaches has to be taken together simultaneously to achieve this, which are there towards the. We have to move toward the electrification of the different processes which are being operated or being fueled by the different fossil fuels or natural resources as of now. Like we have moved toward the electrification of the railway in the last few decades. Similarly, the orientation towards the renewable energy has to be explored in terms of solar, hydro, wind, which is already into the line, and many of the industries are moving towards this and understanding its benefit. Then the availability of access to the clean fuel, affordable, reliable energy is also one of the aspects. Then it will certainly demand the investment. Investment has to be made in terms of concepts and technologies which are carbon neutral or which are decarbonizing technologies which are coming up, and many of them are in the priming stage or in the pilot stage at the moment also, and some are even in the development stage also. Then innovation in terms of acquiring these technologies and implant these technologies into India, which are low carbon or carbon neutral, is one more very important aspect, I believe. And for this, all these things, government policies has to be in place. There has to be a will from the government also. There has to be a dynamic mechanism to address all these issues. A very well coordinated effort is required among the central government and state governments. And certain policies and subsidies and cross subsidies has to be looked into. And more importantly, the data with regard to the energy sector has to be in place, should be updated, should be easily available and transparently achievable by all these important industrialists, so that they can work on it and then they can move in a particular and required direction to help the environment in this regard. And from a practical point of view, from my experience in this industry, like in the last decades, we heard of the carbon credits, which were there in the market. The trading was also there. They had certain amount per credit, which has been gone down drastically now, and it has been not been attractive for any of the recycling or such kind of industries as of now. So this has to be looked into. We should also try to identify and promote the industries which saves carbon footprint, or which you can say the gross negative emissions, which have overall function in the manufacturing process in such a way that the overall emission is gross neutral. So such kind of industry has to be identified and promoted. Also, the industries which emit more these greenhouse gases in the environment, they has to be counseled, they has to be molded to adopt advanced low carbonization technologies, for which they will need some investment. And for this investment, first we have to create how they can have the money to invest on these technologies, for which one has to think on the product that we are manufacturing. We may have to discourage the import, or some other kind of steps has to be taken by the government, so that they have the margin for their finished product and can have money. And they may think on investing on these new advanced low carbon technologies, which will ultimately help us to contribute a contribution by these industries into the low emission and move towards the net zero. A kind of exercise can also be done that we may have some kind of amount collected from these industries, and give some kind of a relaxation in terms of any taxes or anything to the industries which are gross neutral, to promote them. So this will be a balance of the economy, since one is emitting more and other is gross negative. So we can make a balance out of this to move this in this direction simultaneously. And I believe that some technologies has to be studied out. Some research has to be done. These kind of reports, research projects, all these should be brought into a public domain, so that the interested people and the entrepreneurs and the businessmen, they can have the insight into the coming up technologies or the technologies which are under advanced studies, and they can plan to achieve all these things, and plan to put in their effort to establish such kind of technologies to move into this direction. And personally, I feel that plastic and matter, these are the two industries, they have good scope in this direction. They have the greatest opportunities, I would say, as more and more recycling and reuse of waste resources in this segment will play a crucial role in the coming up years, I believe. Since I am from the plastic industry, I would say that there's a lot of attention is being drawn towards the chemical recycling as a solution for the circular economy in the next 20, 30 years. And many of the investment and the projects are in the process in different stages across globe. And depolymerization, pyrolysis, and solvent dissolution kind of technologies are coming up. Some are in the nascent state, and some are in the developing stage, and some are even moving towards the commercial production. So these, I think, has to be explored with due caution, and I think would play important role. One has to move toward the decarbonization technologies to implement all these things, I would say.
Yeah, sure, Nitin. I think it's very important. So the 2 points that you have highlighted here is, one is the transparency and other investment in this sector is extremely important to meet those uh, uh, kind of targets that we are looking at. And it is very interesting at this juncture to talk about it because I was reading the newspaper and I found that even EU has said, and there is a news today, I don't know how many of us have read it, but it said that EU may not be able to meet its plastic packaging recycling targets for 2050, 2025, and 2030. So yes, we have all given ourselves very ambitious targets, and we are trying. Every country, I think, is trying to mitigate the climate change by adopting circular practices, and that's very important when it comes to the international arena. So Zesper, when I look at how European Union is progressing towards it, we've seen that EU has been working on some strategies and policy making in resource efficiency as well. What policies, particularly I'm talking about Denmark because that's your area of work, supports the move towards making product lifespans attractive for the industry and for the consumer? Because it's extremely important to talk about both sides, industry as well as consumer.
Well, good question, and yes, you're right. My home turf is Denmark, and I would love to be able to tell you that here are some really great examples, but I don't really think I can, unfortunately. I would normally I look elsewhere for inspiration for programs that advance like this. And especially at government level, and there are lots of reasons for that, but the vast one is really that we've been world champions, I guess, of incineration and waste to energy. And that means that we are actually far from world champions of the recycling and the reuse sphere. But we have a lot of focus on it, so that's the good side. I've been working with some of the most progressive cities here in Denmark and building circular strategies for them to figure it out. And I would see some of the areas where they really start to focus is on in procurement, where they start to give priority to reuse, repair, maintenance, becoming part of the tenders that they put out. And so we are seeing a shift at city level, and as in many areas, actually, cities are the ones that are at the forefront of this because they move a lot faster than governments. So I think that's interesting. But I think it could be better if we have the next slide, please, by the way. To look at Sweden, because that's an example that's interesting. They've removed the VAT from all repair services, and I think that's really a fairly simple. Of course, it's not free for government, but it's a fairly simple and effective tool to really increase the need of it. Because especially here in Western Europe and Scandinavia, where we have that the capital cost of man hours are really high. So this is an area where it really makes a difference, because unfortunately it's still from a lot of products, it's simply cheaper to buy a new than to get it repaired. So removing the VAT from repair services is a really good move, especially in an area where like here in Scandinavia. And then the Netherlands have been doing a lot of work on this as well, and I see that refurbishment is starting to play a bigger part in their procurement as well. So as you can see, both of these, it's a matter of the government saying, well, what can we do for ourselves? How can we push this rather than legislating on it? So perhaps there's a bit of a common thread there. And then when I saw your question, I also got to think about Scotland, who, and this is a couple of years back, but I still like the approach to it, saying that they simply made a program where they helped to upgrade all these secondhand shops like Salvation Army, and connected what you could call the circular economy thinking with the social side of it, and adding voluntary repair programs for retired handymen. So all of a sudden you get products in these secondhand shops, and then they get a bit of a lift to increase their value, and comes out in this new and more professionalized shop. So and what they saw is that they got quite an interesting take up in sales in these shops. So that's it. But still, I say that, I would like, I think we should actually look to the parts of the world that are less developed than, for instance, Scandinavia are, because we have taken up a ton of bad habits connected to the linear economy. where we just throw it out and buy something new. A, because we can, and B, because we have removed it. Slowly they have dried out and died all these services and people that were able to repair and maintain. So I think we should look to developing world to find the solutions. And I would actually like to sort of put the question back to you. And I'm really excited to hear what you answer this, because what kind of policies do you see either from India or somewhere in your region where you say, I think this is a really good example, because I think we have a lot to learn from you, because we kind of unlearned how to do this stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, you're throwing back the question at me, but yes, I definitely have an answer because Zester has been communicating with people from the developing nations. And uh, well, I would like to answer your question in two ways. So first is what are the steps that are being taken by the government in any developing country, including India? And second is how are the individuals responding to it? So when it comes to the Indian government has taken up a new draft resource recovery policy. I see that this policy is a kind of a change maker and has got very ambitious targets. So this policy actually focuses on the importance of reducing the resource extraction, which is India is notorious when it comes to the resource extraction, and that is where the focus lies. The second focus area is increasing the material productivity, and then the recycling rates, which is extremely important because we also target to reduce the carbon footprint, the carbon emissions at a national level. Now, India being an agrarian society, the focus again is now shifting. I mean, we were always agriculture-oriented society, but then somewhere industrialization and the other focuses came in between. But now I think once again, it's a time when the transition is happening towards the agriculture. And thanks to COVID, what happened was a lot of these people who had come to the cities for looking at alternate livelihood have gone back and they are back to the roots working in the agriculture society. So Indian government and I think the society at large has a huge responsibility of not just providing them livelihood, but using this huge labor, the number, I'm talking about the number of labor in a useful manner, in giving them a sustainable livelihood, along with that bringing in circular changes which would help in reducing the carbon dioxide emissions. The second part, I think, is the individual role here. And I see, be it the African society or maybe the Indian society, I mean, I would call it as the civilizations which are very old, have a tendency of being very, very resource conscious. And that again comes, like you said, it is because you could do it. You went into kind of linear economy because you could really do it. But why we were mostly into kind of a circular practice already was because of not having enough handful to splurge. Maybe for the basic needs, yes. And that's why perhaps the basic needs could be, we were always into the practice of reusing, extending the product. So even today, if I go back to the Indian traditions, I see a lot of things are actually, if you see that, I would say that a single product would actually live 3 lifespans in India as compared to what it does in the Western economies. So I think the product life spans and the increasing utility of the product is in our culture. It's a part of our culture. And what we need to do is, I think it's far easier for a culture like India, a country like India, to revive that aspect. Because it's the westernization, I would call it. I would call it the consumerism. I would call it industrialization started to happen very, very recently. I mean, especially when we opened our markets to the international market. And so it is maybe one generation or maybe 2 generations that we started to change. So I think the transition for India will be very, very easy. And I think we just have to go back to that roots. We still find people who have that skill set of extending, reusing the things, and we can bring those unorganized labor, unorganized sectors into the main play when it comes to extending. And I think we will do it far, far faster than any other economy. So I think I
Yeah,
may
I think
have
you're
been
right. I think you're right. And I mean, I sometimes also say, just look to the oldest person you have in your family, and you
exactly.
imagine you could put that into a hyper speed and backed by business models. That's actually what it's all about. So just go ask your grandma, because they would never throw out stuff. So, but we kind of unlearned that in 2 generations, and I think we're unfortunately further down that track. Just a last comment is that what we see is. Then when you say in the culture that there is a radical shift in the amongst the Danish people, and a pressure on politicians to move on this. So we're definitely seeing a lot of change happen, but you especially asked about policies, and the policies, well, they're starting to come into place, but they are not, as I said, not where to look for, because they are not at the forefront. We are more sort of catching up on this side of the agenda.
That's right. I think that is where India plays an extremely important role, not just in numbers and the scalability thing, but also with the old traditions that have to come back. And I think it's really going to help the entire world in reviving those practices. Well, on that note, Nitin, I understand even a product, when we talk about a product, can be thought of as a living organism. And like other organisms, it transitions through various life cycles from conception of the product to its demise. Each state of the product life cycle demands a special attention. And you being the expert of it, what are the initiatives you think is taken by the industry to focus on reusing the products in order to extend the lifespan?
We are into the manufacturing of many of the textile products like RPSF, woven fabrics of PP and HDP, master batches, PET granules, PET flakes, synthetic yarns, and all that. So, what we have done is that we have focused on recycling of the waste that has been generated during manufacturing of all these processes. And we have focused in 3 ways. We have made 3 concepts on this. First, how to minimize the waste generation within the process. That is first thing, so that the volume can be reduced and can be achievable target. Second is how to recycle that waste which is being generated, which you cannot avoid. And third is how to reuse this into the process, into the mainstream, if you want to increase the life cycle of this, of lifespan of this. Because if you make a separate product out of this and do not make it part of the original process, then the lifespan will be reduced. But once we make it a process part of the usable to the mainstream, then the lifespan of this product is increased. So what we are focused is on how to minimize the waste by maybe the filter designing, reducing the size of filter, their placements in our different processes, so that the generation of waste is down. That is first thing. Then we recycle this waste. Recycling may be done by mechanical or chemical recycling. So the waste which is mechanically recyclable, first that is being done through the cleaning process and all the basic vibro process and all segregation and all that. But the waste which is not being able to recycle mechanically, that is being fed to the chemically recycling process, which we have partial glycolysis plant also, wherein we can recycle post-industrial and post-consumer, both kind of waste. So today we have a capacity of recycling about 350 ton of PET waste per day. And we are now diversifying to the non-PET category also, and coming up with a facility for recycling of PP and PE by the end of the year. And also putting up certain facilities for recycling of woven fabrics as well. So all these kind of waste which are being generated in our different industries, we have ensured that all the waste is being recycled at any one of the facilities. We have put in our process in such a way that any of the waste which is being generated during our process is being recycled. And the recycled product is made to such a quality that it can be reused in the main process, so that its lifespan can be increased. And we're targeting to move towards a group of companies which will be zero waste, zero process waste in the next 2 years, which we can foresee. So we are working on this to increase the lifespan also. And we are also diversifying to look into the recycling of non-recyclable, like MLP, single-use plastic and all that, And we are exploring different technologies from waste to energy, oil, and energy to recycle on this, and hope by the next 6 months we will be having the facility for recycling all kind of plastics which are there in the industry, and we'll be able to offer solutions and recycled products to different brands and different industries of all kind of plastic waste. Beyond this, we are moving into the renewable energy also, and putting up the facilities for solar and exploring the wind and hydro projects also to achieve the sustainable solutions in this regard. So by all these practices, we are ensuring that we have the recycling facilities of all kind of plastic waste, which is basically a resource, and that, the quality of that waste is such that we can use it in the mainstream. And no waste which is produced in our plant is going out from our premises. And we are managing all the zero liquid discharge and all kind of norms also as required by the government and all the agencies. So by this way, we are moving towards a target of zero waste.
I think that's very important because when it comes to the plastic industry, the recycling, I think across globe, we are talking about the marine litter and the recycling of the single-use plastic menace and recycling the other plastic. I think it's very, very important. Thank you for that input, Nitin. It was very helpful. Zesper, the product life cycle management is not a strict sentence. However, in circular economy, the product team always endeavor towards achieving it. What, according to you, are the strategies for expanding the product lifespan? I think it's a long question because strategies plays an extremely important role when it comes to the product lifespan. So you'll have to get into the length of it.
Yes, it's either that or we'll stick here for the next 10 hours. But that's both are doable. But I would actually just like to extend a comment on Nitin's great response there, because just to say, and that's also part of the strategy. So it will be sort of bridge over to this question here, is that when you are at a company level and thinking about how to extend the product life, it's important also to say that perhaps it's not the product in itself, but it might be a component. Right? We've been working with the world's biggest pump manufacturer, Grundfos. So odds are pretty good that the pump that circulates the water in your house comes from them. And one of the key really aha moments for them were actually when they have been reusing materials of some products, but then they started to elevate that to the components. And that made a factor of 10x in value increase of that recycling, right? So sometimes it might be that you can actually extend the product, not the complete product life, but perhaps the vast majority of it. Right? So I guess that's also part of the refurbishing, but just to sort of keep that in mind when people talk about a company looking at strategies for that, it might not be the full product. It can be in any sort of aspect of that product, and that can still be really valuable and also have a good environmental impact. But with that said, it also means, I guess, that you see it's always context specific, and that's of course why it's kind of hard to answer the question you put up here. Yeah, you can just click twice again, and then we can go through all of them at the same time. But because it depends on what product you have, what market you're in, what position you have, what goals you have, what strengths you have, what challenges you're facing, and so on. Again, back to the main slide, the first slide about making sure you solve a business problem while generating this environmental impact, right? But that said, here are a couple of the things that you could definitely look into when you are looking at your product. And then again, case by case, whether or not this is valuable, but have a look at the intended product pathway. What's happening from when I leave it? What kind of trajectory could I expect it to have? And then have a look at that and say, well, what are the customer pain points at any given position in that extended pathway? And then ask yourself, well, what could a circular economy mindset do here? And of course, a part of that would be what we've been talking about today about extending the product life, but it could actually also be something else. But just having a look at that and say, how could we possibly add value somehow by intervening in that extended that product pathway as we expect it to be. Could we serve the market better? Could we upgrade it and serve different segments? But what are all the opportunities along that line? But it really starts by sort of mapping what can I expect happens. So I would say that's one thing you can do. The second one about looking to closing a loop for yourself, depending on what size of company you are, what kind of partnership you can set up. But then start asking questions like, who would find this used material valuable or these used products valuable? What would it take for them to be valuable? What kind of new markets might we enter here? Where could we, basically looking around and start asking questions? And it seems so simple, but we just know that, at least here in the Western part, business leaders are not asking these kind of questions because we're so embedded in that linear flow. So it's produced, it's sold, it's gone, that's it. We don't really consider it. So even though, the material value is just about the same at that second where a customer decides to throw something out. So the perceived value plunges, but the material value is most likely always the same unless you drop your phone on your floor and it's destroyed, doesn't work anymore. And basically you would say material value is the same, but perceived value really goes to zero basically, or perhaps even minus. We're ready to pay to get rid of it, right? So start asking questions like that for your specific product can be really valuable. And then the last thing to put into would be, of course, the whole change process. Looking into a design, how is this at all designed to be upgraded, to be repaired, to be reused in some sense? Very often the answer is no, because that's how we produce today. So what could that be? What would be new business models that could accompany this? As I said, are there opening for new services here? What could we add to it? Again, coming back to this business approach, how can we generate value while at the same time making sure that the product stays in longer or parts of it? And of course, then the whole issue around reverse logistics. If it's not about going out and doing maintenance on the spot, how do we get that to work? And here I always like to see that if you look at logistics and talk to logistics people, supply chain people, then it's always the last mile that's the problem, because getting it from the main distribution and all the way up to almost to the customer is not really a problem. It's the last mile that's always the problem. But the learnings there, the things that they have made to make sure that they can actually deliver that last mile, well, that's what we need to look at when we're looking at the reverse logistics, because here it's the first mile that's the problem. As soon as we get it from each of all of us and to some sort of central unit, then it becomes significantly easier, because then you have volume and the business case is completely different. So it's the first mile that's the tricky part. And how do we make incentives, again, business value meaningful incentives for the consumer, whether it's business to business actually or private people, to be part of that reverse logistics, if that's the solution, right? But again, all the time coming from value. So these are some of the elements that I would always look into at a strategic level. Lots more. As I said, we could definitely easily spend the rest of the day on this, but here are at least some starting points, and I hope that could give some kind of value for people listening in here today.
Yeah, thank you. I think Jesper, it's very important. There is a lot to learn, and I think CEO's perspective, the way you said it, extremely important, because policy making is a part of it, but then how is industry looking into it is extremely important to understand from the industry's perspective as well. Well, great. And I'm sure it is not easy as it seems to be, because companies wish to extend the profitable life of a product for as long as possible. I mean, if I would call that as a product life extension. To do this, they will often introduce extension strategies to delay the product's decline. So Nathan, what are the challenges that are faced in incorporating the life cycle assessment?
You have brought me to the management days, actually. It's a bit of a theoretical kind of question, I would say. And I think it has about 3 questions, as I see it. So let us talk about first product life cycle. Whenever you manufacture a product, it has certain stages of its life, as we see as a management principle. First is of the introduction. then you have a growth of the product, then it reaches its maturity, and then the decline of the product because of various factors. So every product is seen to be passed through all these stages, from its introduction to its decline in the market, and project comes and goes, being launched and being forgotten. So as far as the extension of the product life is concerned, there are many tactics, strategies which are being used to enhance or to delay the decline of the product, so that we can have the maximum benefit at its maturity level. A company will get the maximum benefit in terms of revenue if a product's maturity range or maturity tenure is highest. So from that point of view, there are many tactics or strategy we can say that are being used by different companies. And also you can say that advertising is one of the factor which helps in increasing the product life cycle by attracting new audience because of the change of the generation or different factors. Selling price reduction may be offered to increase the products to increase the product's life and to delay its decline. And adding value, some kind of value addition, maybe some kind of packaging addition or some kind of value addition of quantity addition is also one of the tactics to delay the decline of a product in the market. Then we can also explore new markets, to search the new markets and explore markets which has the potential, which has not been penetrated. All these strategies can be put into place to increase the product's life in a market. And also different kind of packaging, some changes, some kind of different value addition can be given to a product to delay its decline. Then you asked about the life cycle analysis or assessment, which I would say is a methodology basically to assessing the environmental impact associated with all the stages of life cycle of a product. The overall environmental impact of a product's life cycle is we call as life cycle analysis of a product actually. And it involves the inventory of energy, materials that are required across the industry value chain, for the product or service that we are talking about. And it corresponds to the calculation of the emissions which are there into the environment. And it is basically an environmental impact calculation of a product, basically, what I would say. LCA, as I see, has many applications or may be used to identify different aspects of management, like the sales forecasting. LCA helps in forecasting the sales of a product. Accordingly, we can plan. We can have the production planning accordingly, and many of the aspects can be controlled in such a way. Then the product's pricing can also be, decided. It's a changeover can be decided because based on LCA. Many of the controlling, advertising, all these aspects, these are being controlled or can be assessed or better judged by applying the LCA. So it's a useful concept basically in terms of management, and serves as a managerial tool basically to planning and controlling of a product actually. Then you asked about the challenges. What are the challenges of implementing LCA in the real industry? So as we see that you can see there also that there is a graph of a product life cycle. So we can see this is a general graph basically, but there may be some economic fluctuation also. In that case, it will differ from this cycle that we are seeing here. So that is basically an absence of the conformity, absolute conformity. So you cannot be absolutely confirm that the product will follow this life cycle only. There may be some abnormal economic situations also, like we have seen last year as well. Then there may be certain changes that a product which is going towards the growth may directly move into the decline phase without achieving the maturity phase. This may be because of the introduction of a strong competitor, a better product, very low cost product, or maybe because of some very new technology, which is very much economical. So this is also one of the challenge on moving based on LCA. then high production cost to start with, and obviously the marketing cost is also higher when we launch or any product in this case. And obviously the profits are either zero or very low. So one has to have a good deal of cautions and judgments to be exercised. To be exercised are required, to get the work done based on LC and all that.
I understand. I think LCA remains a challenge when it comes to implementation, and there are a lot of challenges. And perhaps that is why it is extremely important to talk about it and let people know how to go about it. It's really a tough game, I do understand, and perhaps that's why we are discussing this today, Nitin. Thanks, Nitin. Thanks, Jasper, for your enriching and open thoughts and very wonderful insights from the industry. I believe it's time to open the floor for the question and answer session, Susanna.
Yes, ma'am. Um, and now I would request all of you to please use the raise my hand option on your screen, and you can also type it in the chat box, and we shall allow you to speak.
There's one question from Sudhir to Jasper. Susanna, you can read it from Q&A.
Yes. Sir.
Yeah, okay. So there is a question, Jasper. Sudhir wants to know if everything remains reuse, repair, and recycle in the system. Would it not be an additional load on the planet other than what's getting produced, or we have to assume to produce less?
So if I understand it correctly, you say if we recycle everything, will we still need to produce extra? Is that the question? Did I get it correct?
Sudhir, can you speak, please?
Sudhir has dropped, I believe.
Oh, okay. No, Sudhir is
He
here.
is there. He is there. Allowed to talk.
Yeah, please. Yeah, Sudhir, you can speak.
Yeah, hi. It's a very insightful webinar. My question here is, if we take all the initiatives, what you said, Jasper, let's say reuse, recycle, or upcycle, whatever. In parallel, there is something getting produced as well. So something which is coming as a future, and the something which is getting recycled and also getting used. So don't you think it's an additional burden on planets right now, or you will have some different methodologies of not producing it only the new one, the new manufacturing?
So interesting question. Well, I would say that if I understand you correctly, because there was a bit of a hiccup on the line, but if I understand you correct, we produce today from new and what that will look like in a future setup if we design it for being ready for it. I mean, we have a lot of stuff out there already that we can extend the product life on. And that would be good if we did that, because yeah, the bill for producing it has already been paid. So it would be really, really good if we could do that. But I think that moving, and I think that's also back to the talk about what kind of design and new business models we could create, is that we could definitely make significantly better solutions out there than what's already out there, because the vast majority of products are not really ideal for doing, for upgrading and for reusing it. So very often we will find that the value and the opportunity to actually possibly upgrade and repair something and extend its life would be significantly better if we designed it to be ready to do so. So I think while there's lots of opportunity out there, there's also a lot of constraints, and especially low value products, it's extremely difficult to make this happen. So we can definitely make something better that will be, well, it's going to be a lot easier to do in the future.
Well, Sudhir, to add to Zesper's answer, I think if I have also again understood your question properly, I would say we are far from the entire reuse and recycle kind of an economy. It's not possible to do away with the production. First, that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing is the idea is to recycle the product uh, or extend the product lifespan of the product at least where it is beneficial. We are not talking about doing something which is not. That's why perhaps the life cycle assessment and even the recycle assessment is important, because is recycling economic, is recycling environmental friendly, is also very very important to find. We may end up in a kind of a recycling uh, process which may be even more harmful than the than using the virgin material. In that
Possible.
case, we do not promote. So we have to do that kind of analysis, and perhaps that's why where Nitin said data transparency plays an extremely important role. And there is some time yet to get on to that stage, but yes, the kind of stage we are already in today, recycling and reusing definitely is the priority than production, but we know it's not going to happen. The idea is to focus on recycling as much as possible. If I were able to answer your question to the
Yes.
extent you want.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for this.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We also have Dr. Jain raising his hand. Dr. Jain, you can speak now.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. It was very interesting. Probably our center, that is Gujarat Cleaner Production Center, has been working on the promotion of resource efficiency and cleaner production for almost last more than 10 years. We also included the financial assistance to the industries who implement RECP under our industrial policy 2020. A number of success stories we have documented of implementation. The problem is that there is a resistance to change. The attitudinal change, particularly from SMEs, is very difficult. They don't want to change. And since we have got so many common effluent treatment plants, they believe that the end of pipe solution is better than what we are promoting, waste minimization, all that. So I'm just seeking some tips from our expert who can highlight that how best we can convince our industry to adopt this RECP, including circular economy. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Jesper, would you like to answer this question?
Well, how to best get businesses to involve in the circular economy or in any aspects of it is the golden question. But I think it really comes back to, again, that first slide I shared about making sure that you deliver business value while delivering environmental impact. That is the number one key. If there ever was a silver bullet, that's the closest you get to it. Of course, it doesn't do it on its own, but if you go up to a business leader saying, I have an opportunity for you to create more value or to solve, let me know what your top 5 biggest problems are, and view the circular economy as a toolbox, and then say, how can I solve one of your biggest problems in a different way than what you're used to, and what your normal consultants will tell you, because they come from a more single-minded and linear approach. And if you can do that, if you can explain and visualize for them a solution to the problem, then it's significantly easier. But if you start by saying you should join the circular economy or you should solve an environmental problem of the world, then it's kind of like, yes, I should, but I also have shareholders, I also have budgets, I also have, right? So again, start and end with business. That's really the best advice I can give.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and behavioral mindset change is the most important thing, Dr. Jan, when it comes to circular economy. Convincing people about, I think when I talk to industry, what I find is the reluctance is on two fronts. First is the profit margins. So they are very scared when it comes to the profit margins. If they see that this would reduce the profit margin, industry, be it MSME or the larger companies, they would not be interested in switching. The second thing that we find I mean, why me? Why not the next door guy? So why should we be responsible for it? So both things are equally important, and we need to answer it in a very, very subtle way, like Jasper said. Perhaps we need to show them the overall perspective, maybe we need to take out some calculation and help them to understand that it perhaps may look like not a very profitable option in the given time, but in long term, it will have uh, definitely have profit margins higher than what you're working on currently. And I think perhaps, and why the answer to why me and not the next door person is that everyone has to be included in circular economy. It's not just the one person. Circular economy ultimately mean it's not just one company seeking into its own circularity, but it is bringing together multiple companies, multiple industries together to use the waste and raw material from each other to get into the circular mode. I think that kind of understanding is really important. And it may take time, but I think we will be able to achieve that. Yeah, that's why you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to add to it, to say that, I mean, now we've been talking very much about product life extension, but there are lots of other disciplines in the circular economy package, right? And altogether, you could say that the circular economy mindset and circular business approach simply is a better match to the world of today. So, some of the things you can get out of it is a lot more flexible design and easier to upgrade and maintain. So a bit more like building with Lego blocks, right? And if you look at what's the outcome of that, well, that's flexibility, that's customization. What does the people of the world today want? They want a unique solution, they want their solution, and they want something new all the time, right? So if you design and build by this, then all of a sudden it's a lot easier to keep up with the pace of the market and to at least fulfill, and more than fulfill, their expectations about levels of customization. So that could be a business value, right? So it's not about saying, hey, what about design for disassembly? No, that's not about it, but it's say, what if your customer could have whatever model, whatever combination they wanted to, and it wouldn't even be a problem for you? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, getting there means looking at design for disassembly. So again, it's all about how to communicate it and how to put in the value proposition and the opportunity that the circular business mindset delivers. And it's about mastering that mindset, really. That's the key essence.
Yeah, I think Zaskar and me have been talking more from the individual perspective. Nitin, I would like you to add something. Would you like to add
Yeah,
here when it comes to the industry?
yeah. I would say that let us talk about the mindset first. Procurement practices and eager to buy green materials, policies of using recycled product with the virgin. These, I would say, would be the key factors. First, we have to inculcate among our society, because till the time we will not create the demand for the recycled product, or will not create the mindset the recycled product has to be used. Why any recycler will create the product? Why any will produce the product? Now, how will get the margin? I would say a simple example. In Europe and USA today, the rPET cost is higher than the virgin. We are producing the chemically recycled products these days. And if I ask in India about the cost, the price which is higher than the virgin, then nobody will be going to pay me. But in USA and Europe, I can fetch a price which is higher than virgin for recycle. So this is the mindset game. Basically, we have to adhere to these practices and set up the mindset of the society that we are doing the recycling. It has certain cost to it, and we have to pay higher price for the environment's sake. So this mindset has to be brought into the system, and the policies has to be made, and we are advocating these policies with the different forums and to the government also, to create a demand for the recycled product into the market first, that the recycled product can be used either partially or completely or to a certain extent, maybe with certain sanctions or certain norms, but its use must be started in India also. Then only there will be a demand, and there will be industries will be focusing on this, and new technologies and facilities will be developed in India for recycling all these things.
I think that's important. Yes, thank you, Nitin. That's a very, very important perspective. We have another question coming from Sanchita Jindal, who wants to know a little bit about the practices in the Western countries. So I think, Zasper, it's for you. She's saying, I think in India, we have a fairly good system of repair and usage, which I will agree to. What are the efforts being carried out by the Western countries? Are there any practical examples of extending the life of products? I think Sanchita before, I think he mentioned something during the answer again, but maybe Jasper, you can briefly talk about it again.
Sure. It depends on if you're looking at a policy level or at a specific case level, so companies doing it, because I think there are lots of examples of companies that are building repair systems of various sorts, and actually also companies that are starting to really build business models around lending it out and getting it back and repairing it and put it out. So if you look at a business level, a lot of stuff is going on. If you are looking at a policy level, I think we could see that it's more, there are lots of stuff is going on in the European Union right now, and there are, as I also said, in some countries and in some cities, that you're starting to see policies that either promote repairing or give priority to it in some sense. But I think actually right now a lot of the interesting stuff is coming from beneath. It's not driven by policy, it's driven by business, simply because there are lots of business opportunities. So look to the entrepreneurial side and look to the more innovative companies, and that's where the action is going on. That's where the interesting stuff is happening.
Thank you, Jasper, for answering.
Sanchita, I hope this has answered your question. If anything left, you could actually unmute yourself and ask. Great. I think you have answered her well, Jasper. Thank you very much. We have taken up the questions. Any more questions from the audience, please?
We have one question in the chat box from Mr. T. Shankar. In India, as Shalini rightly pointed out, the product lifetime is already good in most cases. Among the younger people who have more use and throw kind of practice, do you see role of industry organizations in building consumer consciousness? Is there a way you suggest for building partnership between industry and consumer in creating a circular economy?
Well, sir, to answer your question, I think when it comes to companies, yes, they have started thinking about increasing the product lifespan, and they are working towards making consumer conscious about, let's say, using more of biodegradable kind of products, and even they've started using these kind of material. And I see a lot of movement happening, be it in the textile industry or in the fashion industry, or maybe let's say the packaging industry, where a lot of work has been done and is going on already. And what they have done is, I think they have at least been able to kind of bring that kind of awareness in the person that you have to go for sustainable products. And a similar kind of thing wave I see in Europe as well. So though this started as an industry movement, I think it has now become a consumer movement where consumers are becoming more conscious globally. The patterns are similar when it comes to America. It is similar in Africa. Europe, I see the similar practice, Australia, New Zealand, and India. Everywhere the practices seems to be same. And partnerships with the industries and consumers, when you say, I think this is already happening in a very indirect. There is not, I don't see an organized way of happening it, but in a very unorganized, informal way, it's happening. That's my perspective. But Jasper and Nitin are most welcome to answer this.
I fully agree. And it's kind of like a dance between consumers and businesses, right? So consumers are demanding it, and some, especially the younger generations, are demanding it. And industry is responding and developing new models and pushing for it. So once they say, okay, this is the pathway we're on, then it becomes a critical issue for them to really push for that consciousness to change, because that's where they will flip over a bigger portion of the market. But we're also seeing something interesting, and that's going to be my final say here, is something interesting is going on. I think that's kind of like the next level that we'll be looking at, is that we're seeing a shift from conscious consumers saying, I'm expecting my company or the brands that I buy from to behave well, to be part of the solution, to saying, hey, I want them to support me being part of the solution, right? So it's kind of like that We've seen on social media for years that we portray ourselves and push an image of ourselves. And, you know, we're getting to a point where for a lot of people, that has to be including a sustainability profile. And that's why it becomes interesting all of a sudden to say, well, if I buy from a brand, I would like it to help me become even better, to deliver better results, to feel better with myself, but also to be able to portray myself as part of that global movement. So that's really the next level. It's on top of what they already do, and it just strengthens the requirements to cities, to industries. So just even more work to do ahead of them. If you're not catching up, you're just falling even further behind.
Thank you, Jasper, for asking that, for answering that question. I think there are no more questions coming up, so we'll call it a day. Once again, sincere thanks to all of you for your valuable presence. We really appreciate your taking time to participate in the event. We look forward to see you all in our next session, which is on 31st, and it is the continuation of this session. You can visit our website to check out our upcoming events. It's been a pleasure being with all of you today. I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jasper. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Susanna.